On Tech News Today, a major security company is being accused of creating fake malware. Alphabet might get into the mosquito business, and we'll tell you why Reddit is now censoring itself for the Russian government. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, August 14th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay, period. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to BraintreePayments.com/TNT. And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card when you get a loan. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is Mashable Senior Tech Correspondent Christina Warren, who's coming in by audio Skype. Hey, Christina, what's going on?
Not much, Mike. How are you?
I am very, very well. Now, I know that you are a huge user of both Periscope and Meerkat from the global headquarters of Mashable in New York City. You guys are always streaming out through those media. And I know you do a lot of podcasting and that sort of thing. And Samsung, when was it, yesterday, day before yesterday?
Yesterday.
It seems like so long ago.
I know.
Announced a whole bunch of stuff. And one of them was a new feature called Live Broadcast, where from a Samsung phone, one of their new flagship Samsung phones, you can essentially Periscope or Meerkat directly to YouTube from the phone. Now, I think that that's really amazing, actually, and kind of a great feature, but I'm curious to get your take on it.
Well, to be clear, it was not quite working on the demo units that they had at the Samsung event. We will be getting our review units, I think, soon, and we'll be able to check it out. But what it looks like they're doing, and this is super smart, it looks like they worked with YouTube, and it's built into the camera itself. So it's built into the camera app. You don't have to open up a third-party app. And when you go to video, it does take a little finagling to get to. I wish that the button was maybe instantly there. But you're basically able to open up the live video mode. And what it'll do is it'll start broadcasting directly to YouTube, which is genius because, you know, YouTube already has this great live platform. But rather than making people use another app or use another kind of thing, you can just do it with the video app built into your phone. I think this could be huge. And I think this is a really good way for YouTube to maybe kind of back into this live video market that they arguably sort of pioneered and definitely have the infrastructure for, but have sort of missed out on because of the way the branding of all these things happens. You know, there's the Twitches of the world, obviously, and which is now owned by Amazon. There's Periscope, there's Meerkat. YouTube has had this capability for a long time, but they haven't really made it easy to do. I think that having it built into a Samsung phone, you know, the most popular OEM, it could be really big.
Google is so good at snatching a defeat from the jaws of victory. You referenced that they've had this capability for a long time, and you're referring, of course, to Hangouts on Air, which went directly. Yep. So the way it basically worked, it was a wonderful thing on the desktop, not mobile. Key point there. But from the desktop, you could do a live stream to Google Plus, and people could share it, and it could go viral as it was live. Amazing feature that some people used, some people didn't. As you said, it was a little difficult and counterintuitive to use. You know, people would go to Google Plus and go, "Where is it again? I don't remember exactly." And so it was very kind of difficult to use. And then, of course, you could do it with YouTube. There have been different third-party integrations. Little cameras have had this feature. Now Samsung has it. I hope that they roll it out, but this is how Google messes this kind of stuff up. They didn't announce it. Like, you know, what would Apple have done? Apple would have not let anybody talk about it until a big thing, and they would have built it up and said, and here it is. You know, Tim Cook's voice would have gotten really low and really like slow, and he would have said, "It's amazing. We're really excited about." No, Google just let Samsung say, "Oh, by the way, here's a feature that is really not that important." I don't know. It's like, you know, the missing element with Hangouts on Air was mobile, and now this is Hangouts on Air mobile, but in an easier way. It's way better in a way than Meerkat or Periscope because, of course, the audience that exists on YouTube is, what, 2 orders of magnitude higher? It's
Absolutely.
just a massive potential
It's
audience.
massive, and not only that, but they have the infrastructure in place to actually be able to, keep the streams up and keep things working. I think what will be interesting to see is, of course, what makes Periscope and Meerkat special is the social element. And you and I have talked about that before, and that's obviously something that was really big with Hangouts on Air. It's not clear yet whether or not users will be able to kind of comment live in real time on these YouTube broadcasts, or if it will just be kind of a broadcasting out to the ether sort of thing. Because I do think that what makes the Periscope experience different from, say, the Kick experience from 5, 6, 7 years ago is that kind of real time aspect where you can have people talking to you, and even the new feature that Meerkat has, Cameo, where you can even throw the video stream over to someone else for 60 seconds at a time.
Yeah, and that's a cool feature, but ultimately, I think that if YouTube, if Google just added a live stream to YouTube button on the YouTube app, it would be killer. I mean, just killer.
Oh, I agree. I agree completely. I'm just saying, I wonder, they would need to have the live commenting feature added as part of it too.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, let's jump into our top story. This is a weird one, folks, so brace yourselves. Security firm Kaspersky Lab is being accused of trolling competitors in order to damage their reputations. Reuters is reporting in an exclusive that 2 former Kaspersky Lab employees say Kaspersky tricked antivirus companies that compete against them of classifying harmless files as malicious. The alleged campaign targeted Microsoft, AVG, Avast Software, and other companies, tricking them into deleting or disabling files on the PCs of their users or customers. Kaspersky Lab denies the accusation. Christina, Warren, this is bizarre. Do you think that there's any potential merit in this?
I would love to say no, but knowing how truly bizarre and frankly kind of scary the inner workings of antivirus companies are, and especially, kind of the parts of the world where they're based and the people they work with, I wouldn't put it past any company to do this. I certainly don't want to, cast aspersions on Kaspersky and say that they did this, but it's bizarre enough to almost have merit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and of course, it has to be said that executives at all 3 of those companies that I specified, Microsoft, AVG, and Avast, had told Reuters in the past that some unknown entity had tried to, in fact, induce false positives in recent years. So this is something that probably started with that story, and then they having reported that, you know how it is when you report something, the people who with good information come out of the woodwork to give you more information sometimes, or they're disgruntled employees who just want to stick it to Kaspersky. We don't know exactly what is going on here. Now, these former employees at Kaspersky Lab has been manipulating false positives on and off for more than 10 years. So this has been going on for a long time, and the peak period, they said, is between 2009 and 2013. This is terrible because, of course, these companies live and die by their reputations, and Kaspersky Labs has the best reputation, I think, among all of them because they're so aggressive at rooting out, not because they don't do this kind of thing, but because they do, in fact, root out and find and discover and identify the sources of lots of malware and so on. So this is really a bizarre story, I think.
Completely bizarre, and it's sad because what happens when this sort of thing happens, and you understand kind of, I guess, the rationale why a company would want to do this. It's getting harder and harder to kind of make a living in the antivirus, anti-malware space, and so you want to be the best. You want to have the reputation as being the best. So getting other companies to not perform as well is one way to do that. But the problem is, if consumers start to worry that these antivirus and anti-malware apps are not going to identify the right things and are going to start, blocking important files as false positives, they might not use anything at all, and that's even worse for the entire ecosystem.
Got some more news for you coming right up, but first let's talk about Braintree. The bottom line, we can talk about code, we can talk about payments, we can talk about convenience for you, the developer, but let's talk about the #1 most important thing that you're doing as a company that has a website or a mobile app, and that is customer service. If you have great customer service, you're going to win, as Donald Trump would say. You're going to win, and your competitors are going to be the losers. And the way to do that, one way to have great customer service is simply use Braintree. The great customer service is baked right in because when you use Braintree, all of the payments are super easy. That's why companies like Uber and Hotel Tonight, Airbnb, Living Social, Muntree, and other unicorns are using Braintree because it's just you can just check off that item, half an hour, 45 minutes to build your code into your app or your website, and you suddenly have fantastic customer service. You're providing customer service around the payments part of your product. It's an invisible payment process. If you use Uber, you know what I'm talking about. You call an Uber, you get in, you go for the ride, you get out. At no point in that are you even thinking about payments. There are so many features and benefits of this, but the bottom line, let's just summarize this very easily. It's built-in great customer service. It's automatic great customer service, and that's what you want to provide for your customers. Braintree gives you a full-stack payment solution, support for all payment types that your customers might want. You can start accepting PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, credit cards, and so much more with a single integration across all platforms. They also offer superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. So learn more, and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/TNT. Google has been thinking about backing the creation and distribution of a genetically modified mosquito. According to an exclusive on The Information, Recode's Mark Bergen has learned that a Harvard scientist named George Church has talked with Alphabet CEO Larry Page, still not used to saying Alphabet, about backing his gene editing technique for creating lab-modified mosquitoes. Mark Bergen himself is here from Recode. He's the associate editor for search and online advertising, and he joins us now. Welcome to the show, Mark Bergen.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Alphabet CEO.
Yeah, Alphabet CEO. So bizarre. I want so badly to say Google. Of course, I got over my iWatch obsession, so it can be done.
You did.
Well, it appears that a former Google engineering VP named Linus Upson is driving this idea. So he doesn't work for Google anymore, but I guess he wants Google to be involved in this. Why does he, or why does anyone, want GMO mosquitoes?
Well, he does work for Google.
Oh, he does still. Okay.
Still the fourth quarter when they become Alphabet. I mean, I can't really speak. I think this kind of indicates, why Larry Page created Alphabet in some sense. It's to take on these like massive problems that have nothing to do with internet advertising. Google is what we're seeing a little bit from Alphabet. They spun off Life Sciences as its own separate subsidiary. Calico is their kind of far out, the one solving death. That's now its own separate company. So this is a sort of, revolves like a lot of data. And CRISPR is the genetic kind of gene editing technique that's really the rage right now in biology. And Google's kind of tapped into that. And then something that Larry Page thinks about a lot. And I think, this is someone that's been there. Linus Upson's been at the company for 10 years. He helped build the Chrome browser. I reached out, having talked to him, and get the sense that this is the kind of project where Larry's like, don't leave Google, but instead do this startup and we can incubate you inside Alphabet.
So do we think that if they were to kind of take this on, that as you said, this would be kind of, maybe within Calico or a startup incubated within Alphabet otherwise? Or do you think that this could, potentially be some sort of philanthropic or, science donation in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Dr. Church. She was saying that a lot of their interest is around the philanthropic model. I mean, right now, he has Dr. Church has his own company in Boston that's doing this more for genetic research around therapeutic medicine. That's kind of a for-profit angle. It seems like Larry Page's interest is more of the philanthropy side, to kind of fighting malaria and dengue fever. There might be a commercial angle to that. Who knows? I mean, I haven't really talked to enough people doing that work. Google can afford to just kind of put up a philanthropic arm and just do these kind of projects that don't have any returns for investors. It seems like it's not going to be a massive project inside Alphabet, but really at this point, we don't know. Nobody knows.
It seems to me that this wouldn't be a good project for Google simply because it's already out there. They're already doing this in Florida and Brazil. There's lots of philanthropic energy behind it, including from Bill Gates himself. This is something that's been in the works for a long time. So it seems to me that this is not the kind of thing that would excite somebody like Larry Page, who, unless he could figure out how to actually put advertising on mosquitoes, wouldn't be all that interested in this. I'm
going to push back. I don't think Larry cares about ads anymore.
Okay.
I think that, I think what this brings is a potential for data that's been unlocked, right? And you think about the potential for genetic editing and genetic engineering is both this kind of groundbreaking research, but also loads and loads of data. And I think, the executives at Google care about data. They care about information still. And that's the sense I get that's tying everything, all these disparate constellations within Alphabet, is they're all tied behind, what does this mean for data, and how can we get more data and organize it?
So speaking of that, as you say, the whole point of this is data, and that's what Google cares about. So the scientific community and that side, is there any reason that they should trust Google to be in charge of, or should they? Is there any reason they might want to be kind of reticent about their involvement in these types of data projects at this scale, especially when we start talking about, getting into nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a natural and very warranted distrust of Google. But at the same token, Google is able to, they have money and funding for this that a lot of universities and research institutes don't. So it's sort of kind of have to trust Google.
Yeah, it's, I mean, after Orchid and Wave and what they did to Google Reader, we'll trust them with that, but unleashing biology into the world, we have to try. This is actually one of the things that should give concern to people who are concerned about GMO. It's a controversial issue. And of course, mosquitoes are the most deadly animal by far on the planet. They kill millions of people every single year, and it's a horrible thing, and you don't want to just spray DDT. It's a huge problem, and I think that we really do need high-tech solutions to this problem, and this might be the solution. But having said that, I think that, if you're against it, the fact that Google has, billions and billions of dollars to spend on it is not reassuring.
Right.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big question to ask going forward is, if now that Google's kind of given a formal title to this, that they have these different businesses that are operating as something that's totally different than departure from what they've been doing. Can they be successful? What is it? How are they interacting with regulators? How are they interacting with the rest of the industry? What the hell should consumers think about this? And those are like big unanswered questions.
If Google is going to be modifying animals, I'd prefer that they give my dog the capacity for speech and opposable thumbs or stuff like that.
They might be working on that. I don't know yet.
They'll need a division under that, and they'll certainly be dog fooding that product for sure. Mark Bergen's at recode.net, and you can follow him on Twitter at @MHBergen. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right. The New York Times data science team has created a tool to help them decide which stories to promote on social media. The tool is called Blossom, and it's a bot built into Slack. Shan Wang is a staff writer for Neiman Journalism Lab and joins us now. Hey, Shan, how are you doing?
Hi, good.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, how does Blossom work exactly?
So Blossom is integrated into Slack, and anyone actually in the Times newsroom can use it. You basically query Slack. You can start a direct message, or you can just ask in any channel in Slack, Blossom, Facebook, and Blossom will predict for you what posts will do well on Facebook. It's kind of a complex, it draws on a very complex store of data that I, as a non-machine learning expert, do not really understand, but it takes some time to train the bot. But Blossom will show you stories that will do well on various Times accounts, including, op-ed and their main page. And Blossom is also good for Twitter. It's not quite ready for other accounts where the Time appears, but I'm sure that is where the New York Times is thinking about going.
So they're using machine learning for this. I'm assuming that they're basically kind of analyzing what times articles do the best, what sorts of articles do the best at those times, and what the engagement rates are amongst other competitors and other stories. Is that accurate? And who developed this? Was this developed by the product team at the Times, or who's behind this?
So the data science team at the Times, which is run by Swiggins, developed it, and it was built primarily by someone, Colin Russell, who is actually embedded directly with the Times audience development team. He actually just spends his whole day with social editors and growth editors there. And in terms of what parameters the machine uses to figure out what stories work best, it's content, but it's also content interacting with how many engagements a story will get on Facebook, how many retweets, how many replies, not just timing. So it could be anything from a word or a person who appears in a story to the time, the location, it's literally anything you could imagine.
It's somewhat surprising that the New York Times, of all organizations, would be jumping into this, simply because you imagine the future of journalism as being a battle between the Googles and the Facebooks of the world who are using algorithms and machine learning to make what are essentially editorial judgments on the one hand, and then the New York Times coming in with all these really experienced editors on the other, and it's human curation versus machine curation. And it's New York Times who has human curation essentially as their one and only advantage against the technology companies, and they're jumping into the technology part of this. Isn't it the job of editors to make these kind of decisions?
I don't know if it's that surprising, actually. The Times has been doing a lot of this sort of automation work. I don't know if I'm sure you've seen the now infamous innovation report that leaked and was released last spring, but they talked a lot about growing their audience. And they were very pleased, of course, with their repertorial successes, but obviously reaching a wider audience was something that they wanted to do better at. And I think a lot of these automation moves have been helpful in freeing up reporters to do more reporting. I mean, it's not really. The New York Times did something recently where they built a robot to help tag stories, and I'm sure anyone who's written a story knows tagging is the most annoying thing in the world. But if you can have a robot come in and tag for you, you have more time to work on checking your quotes, work on getting better quotes, work on talking to more people. And it's not like humans aren't involved. The Blossom bot, as this Slack bot is called, helps you decide what could do well. You can ignore it. You can adjust headlines. You still need social editors. So I'm not sure the dichotomy of machine versus human is quite as scary as you put it.
No, and I think it's worth pointing out that the New York Times is hardly the only organization investing in this. At Mashable, we have our own product team that's actually, we have a data scientist on staff who works with our social team, but we have an entire product called Velocity that monitors stories and things on our site and others to see what's going to go viral and what that potential is. There are also a number of startups, frankly, that are focused on this very thing where they sell tools to news publications. Social Flow is one that comes to mind, where they basically try to optimize when the reach is going to be the best. And so I think to a certain degree, it makes sense for the Times to bring it in-house rather than relying on third-party tools, especially since they have metrics and those details themselves. I'm curious how well this is working for them so far.
According to Colin, who has been embedded with the audience development team, it's been working really well. I think 120% more clicks on the Blossom-powered post. It's still, I don't think, been in use long enough to really say, but 120% more clicks is a pretty good metric. I would be proud of that and happy to continue using Blossom. And I think a lot of news organizations are really jumping at this and asking for it to be open source and released.
Sure. And
of course, that's not how machine learning works. So
no, I was going to say the only problem with doing that is, of course, and we've seen this with some of the other tools that come out, is that if you open source it or if everyone starts to use it, then the benefits of that machine learning tends to go away because the optimized times tend to be the same for almost everything. It becomes one of those things where it's almost, at least in my experience, working with some of these products and kind of balancing both, the journalistic side of when to do things and the machine side. If the data can get, too good, users tend to kind of tune themselves out if things are too programmatic. So you have to make sure that the machine side is constantly learning and refining itself. And I would be concerned that if this were open sourced, some of that advantage might go away because everyone is using it.
Sure, and the New York Times benefits from having a vast store of content where a lot of organizations don't quite have so many stories.
The inevitable outcome, of course, will be that the big, deep-pocketed organizations will have this artificial intelligence advantage, and the startups will have to do it the old-fashioned way, and they'll have a disadvantage. But that's the way it goes, and at least, hopefully, they're sort of being crowd pleasers with this stuff. They'll, give people what they want, which is kind of the opposite of what newspapers are supposed to do to a certain extent, but we'll see how it goes. At least they're kind of playing it both ways. They do have the print newspaper. They do have a website that's human curation, and then when they get to Twitter and Facebook, they're trying to use some machine learning and so on. Shan Wang is at neimanlab.org, and you can follow her on Twitter at Shan2. Thank you so much for joining us today, Shan.
Thank you. All
right, bye-bye. Apple released a new diversity report yesterday. As with most big companies in the Valley, they say they're trying, but the results are minimal. Max Neeson is the management reporter for Quartz and joins us to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Max.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Now, how's Apple doing on diversity?
Not terrifically well. Just like with many other technology companies, they're not particularly diverse, particularly when you look at the leadership and technology parts of the company. Most of the executives are white men, and most of the engineers are too. They're doing slightly better than some other major tech companies, Facebook and Google, which also report these kind of numbers. They're doing only very slightly better than they did last year, but they have managed to hire what they say is the largest number of women and people from underrepresented minorities than any other year so far. So it looks like they're definitely making an effort.
Yeah, as you said, they're doing slightly better than some of the other companies, but the percentage increases are still only minimal from last year. About half of their staff are retail employees in major cities. So that, their headcount is, I think, 114,000. That compares to about, I think it's about 67,000 for Google. And since a lot of those are retail employees, does that help skew some of their numbers when it comes to diversity, especially when it comes to some of these groups when they're hiring, especially when they throw out things like, 35%, or 65% more women hired than last year, 66% more Latinos, 50% more African Americans compared with last year. Does the fact that a large portion of those hires are on the retail side and not necessarily in the tech and engineering or corporate side, does that help skew those numbers, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely do think that has an effect. They actually broke out the retail numbers for the first time this year, which actually lets us take a closer look at that. And it looks like the retail side is pretty substantially more diverse on the race and ethnicity side, at least in the US. Although on the gender side, it actually might be making their numbers look a bit worse because it's something like 71% of the retail employees are male, which is, which is about their current number. So I don't think it's helping them there, but they do have more Black and Hispanic retail employees than they do, for example, in tech or leadership.
Now, it seems to me that Apple seems to do better than companies like Twitter or Facebook on Black and Hispanic employees, even if you discount the retail stores.
Yes.
Is that accurate? And what are they doing that's different, if anything? Do they have any explanation for any of their numbers like that?
They do marginally better on that point. The explanation is the same as everyone. We're working hard to increase the pipeline, to be better at hiring these type of people. What they did do that was unique, I thought, and pretty interesting, was they actually revealed the percentage of new hires that come from these disadvantaged minority classes in technology, for technology hiring in particular. So it was 13% of new hires were Hispanic, 11% are Black. We don't know those numbers for Google or Facebook, for example. It would be really nice to see them so we can get a better sense of how they're kind of following through on their commitments to do better on the hiring side in terms of diversity.
I would also add to that Apple, and I'm not sure about some of the other companies, but they're unique, I think, in the fact that they have, pledged with the Thurgood Marshall Fund and also with historically Black colleges and universities to start recruiting directly from those places. And that's something they've started in the last year with their new Director of Human Resources. So that probably has something to do with why they work a little bit better in regards to Hispanics and African Americans than some of the other companies in the Valley.
And Christine, I'm sorry, go ahead, Max. I'll let you answer that.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely true. And it's something that other companies are doing as well. For example, I think Google recently dramatically expanded the number of colleges that it recruits at. And, you know, I think that's the only way that this is going to change over time is if you start to, at the entry level, when people get into the company, be a lot more diverse at that stage. It's going to take time, obviously, as we're seeing with Apple, but that will move the dial over time.
You know, one of the interesting things that I'm kind of fascinated by is that if you assume that in the future, Silicon Valley companies like Apple and Twitter and Facebook and others get closer to real diversity, they're going to have to be more specific about what, you know, what are the metrics for having reached their goals. For example,
right.
Do you match the diversity of the United States? Do you match the diversity of California or Silicon Valley? Intel had this really interesting thing that I'm going to be looking into, Christina, which they called that they were trying to match the diversity of the pipeline of employees. And I'm not really quite understanding that. It sounds to me like a way to get around the fact that China and India, which are the two largest countries in the world, are very good at two things, which is churning out a huge number of engineers, software developers, et cetera, and also training women to be in engineering roles. They're better on a percentage basis in the United States and a lot of other countries. And so if you say, oh, the pipeline is China and India and whoever works in Silicon Valley and whoever, you know, it sounds to me like they're custom tailoring what the playing field is for diversity, and then they're trying to match that. Right? Is that the right way to go? I mean, what's the right? How do you know when you have a properly diverse organization?
I mean, I think that's a question that these companies all have to answer for themselves. I don't think that I think I agree with your assessment of Intel's plan. I think that seems like a way to almost get around the real problems that we face, especially in the United States. As you noted kind of in our show notes, you know, Apple breaks out their diversity by gender worldwide, but they only break it up by race in the United States. And I asked them about that, and they said, well, that's because basically, you know, Hispanic and Black employees only exist for them really in the United States. That right there is, I think, one of the reasons why those two groups need to have more attention paid to them. The fact that, you know, there is we've talked about this before, Mike, you know, a disproportionate, at least in terms of the population, number of Asian employees than you know, other types, and that is only increasing. And I'm not saying that these companies shouldn't be hiring more and more Asian employees, or that there's anything wrong with that. But it is interesting to note that is an area that is going up, whereas some of these other groups, you know, Google has 600 African American employees in their entire company. That's frankly terrible. And so I wonder if maybe the proper approach to this is to start not wanting to look at, you know, trying to match whatever the pipeline is, but setting real goals, saying we want to have, you know, this amount of increase in our own hiring practices and in our own employee makeup that's separate from what, you know, might be happening in other places, just to say we need to be more diverse because this is what's going to give us a better product and a better company.
Yeah, and you know, this is and somebody referenced this in the chat room, but I think this is I'm going to be writing a column on this topic because there are a couple of elephants. There are two elephants in this living room. One of them is how they, you know, what is the right metric for what diversity is, and the other one is the problem of brain drain. Let's say, for example, if they don't make a distinction between immigrants or imported employees or global employees on the one hand, and trying to match the diversity that exists within the United States. If they don't make a distinction, then the solution, if there's pressure on them to be diverse and they want more Black employees, they're going to do this horrible brain drain of Black majority countries in the world. You know, Kenya and so on has a burgeoning tech sector that's really interesting and exciting. Rwanda, as we know, has a really interesting tech scene there. And it would be terrible for those countries, for Silicon Valley companies, to solve their diversity problems by draining and emptying all these other countries of their best engineers. So that's another problem that could be come out of this whole thing. But again, nobody's talking about this, and I think that it's really necessary that we talk about this as little, you know, successes are measured here and there. And Max, we haven't forgot about you, and I want to thank you for hanging on there. Max, are you optimistic personally about the future of diversity in Silicon Valley?
I'm definitely optimistic in the sense that, you know, if you look back a few years, companies were basically filing lawsuits to prevent having to disclose this kind of data. And now they're doing it of their own volition and getting more detailed about it and releasing things like their EEO-1, the federal filing that you have to make about employee diversity. So there's something to hold them accountable to. We know the extent of the problem. And at least, they're hiring people to focus on this. They're starting programs. So that definitely makes me optimistic, but that doesn't mean there isn't a tremendous amount that needs to be done still. And I think it's right on that we should ask them to have targets. There are only a few people doing that, notably Intel has targets, Pinterest just listed some. But unless they're going for something specific, we really, the impulse is going to be to take an extremely long time. And I feel like the faster that we try to change this, the better, because if you look at the statistics on the tech side and among executives in particular, it's pretty unacceptable. And, a change of 1% a year doesn't really feel particularly satisfying.
No, it doesn't. And clearly the solution here is, number one, you have to get children, all children, excited about engineering and nerdy subjects. And number two, I think we all need to publicly shame anyone who tells children that if you're this type of person, you should be interested in technology, and if you're that kind of person, you shouldn't be interested in technology, period. I mean, I think we should, people should be interested in technology based on their own interests, not what society is telling them they should be interested in. And so that's really the core of it. Of course, that's not something that's going to come out in next year's diversity report. That's going to take a decade or two. So we'll see how we do there. Well, Max is at qz.com and on Twitter at Max Niesen. Niesen is spelled N-I-S-E-N. Max, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. I appreciate it as well. Well, Chromebooks tend to be either super cheap, flimsy laptops or super expensive, high-resolution Chromebook Pixels. It's either the bed is either too small or too large. And now Dell has aimed at the middle with a new Dell Chromebook 13 that's just right. Raymond Wong is I've been instructed to call you Ray Ray. Ray Wong is a product analyst at Mashable and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Raymond.
Hi, I'm aware Christina told you to call me Ray Ray.
You are Ray Ray. That is your name. Own it, embrace it.
Now the entire internet's going to start calling me Ray Ray.
It's going to happen. Just embrace it. Now tell us about the Chromebook 13, starting with the case and materials on the outside. This one is not unapologetically plastic, is it?
Unapologetically plastic. That's going to be the way we call plastic from now on, right? It is not plastic. It's got a carbon fiber cover. That's the lid is carbon fiber, entirely carbon fiber. It's got a magnesium alloy palm rest, and the base is nice aluminum. So it's a very solid, premium feeling laptop. It's not quite as nice as the Chromebook Pixel and Pixel 2, but it feels really good.
So from the specs perspective, how does this compare with the cheap Chromebooks, and how does it compare with, the Pixel and the Pixel 2?
So obviously I've tested a lot of Chromebooks. I've tested like the super cheap stuff, like $99 ones, $199 ones, $249 ones. And then, on the other opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the Pixel, which is a $1,000 computer with like a Core i5 processor. And it's basically the MacBook of Chromebooks, right? So on the Chromebook 13, it's got a 13-inch display, full HD. There are two models. One is HD. One is a touchscreen, and one is non-touchscreen. It's got 3 different processor chips: Intel Celeron processor, Intel Core i3, and the top of the line Intel Core i5. And then you got options of 2 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes, or 18 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes of internal storage, and then a micro SD card slot to expand it. And then also up to 12 hours of battery life, so I'm told. So pretty decent specs. I wouldn't recommend getting the 13. The low-end Celeron model, that one comes with the lowest specs, 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of internal storage. And in my experience, that's just not enough for a Chromebook, especially if you want to run lots and lots of tabs, which is what you're going to be doing because it runs Chrome OS, which is essentially just the Chrome browser, I've
been playing with the Acer Chrome Base Touch, and I've been kind of, I like it a lot, but I've been astonished at how slow it is, even with a very fast internet connection. It's not the internet connection that's causing the slowness. It's the performance of it as a laptop. How's the performance on the higher end version of this Dell?
So I got to play around really briefly with the mid-range middle model. So that's the 4 gigabytes of RAM, Intel Core i3 processor, and it's actually really, really fast. I was pretty surprised at the performance. I was able to open like up to like 10 to 12 tabs, which is, I think that's a pretty normal workload. And everything worked perfectly. I mean, the keyboard's fantastic. It's backlit, it's full size, and the trackpad, you know, you got to really check out the trackpad and the keyboard, and the trackpad's perfect. It's really, really great.
So this thing starts at $400, and I'm not sure what the highest model ends up tapping out at. Do you think that this is, you know,
the highest model I believe is like $729?
Okay, great.
$799. The middle one that I tested really quickly was $529.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here's my question. So if I'm going to spend $530 or even $800 on a laptop, can't I do better than a Chromebook, and shouldn't I?
You probably could. You probably could. You could easily buy, you know, an 11-inch MacBook Air. So that's like $800, right?
I think so. Or even, you know, getting some of the, you know, ThinkPad and Asus machines are nice too. I guess my question is, I mean, I understand what HP is kind of trying to go after, having something that's not super. Excuse me, this is Dell, right?
This is Dell.
Not super cheap. Yeah, Dell. I get what they're trying to do, not be super cheap, but I wonder if at this price point, if we're not delving into the territory where, unless you're a Pixel, which is kind of like a you know, weird status symbol, you know, you wouldn't be better off getting something that's running Windows 10 that still has nice build quality.
Right. I mean, this is designed for, obviously, for people who are completely living in the cloud. Chromebooks are always there for people who store all their data in the cloud, you know, Google Drive and Dropbox or wherever. And who want a really stripped down version, a lightweight computer that won't, you know, get viruses and stuff.
You know, and to play devil's advocate, I think that, of course, this is aimed at business. And if you're getting this for business, this is a fantastic second device. If you've already got desktops at home at work, or whatever you have at home at work, and the boss is paying for it, you're expensing this, that is not a bad price point at all.
It's aimed at businesses, but I also think it's a fantastic Chromebook for consumers just because the build quality is really great. And if you get the mid-range model, it's going to be, you know, as good as a $1,000 Pixel.
All right. I mean, personally, I think I would probably spend the extra $300 and get the Pixel 2. But that's just me. I love that screen, and you know, after a MacBook Pro, it's hard to go back. It's like flying business class.
Who's willing to pay $1,000 for a Chromebook, though?
Hopefully my boss will. That's who. All right. Well, Ray Wong is at Mashable.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Ray Wong Y. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ray.
Thank you, too.
All right. Reddit is now censoring the site for the Russian government. We told you this week that Russia's Internet Authority threatened to ban or block Reddit in Russia because of a thread that gave information about how to grow magic mushrooms. Then Russia actually went through with their threat and blocked the site. Reddit responded by deleting the mushroom thread. And 2 years ago, of course, the Russian authority blocked the whole of Wikipedia because of a single article on smoking pot. Christina Warren, this is a creepy turn of events. They have no problem with the rampant racism and sexism and all the rest on Reddit. It's just, don't grow mushrooms.
Don't grow mushrooms. Right, exactly. It's like, okay, you know, we'll remove this thread because the government of Russia is going to come at us. But C-Town can stay until it becomes a pain for us to moderate.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's really incredible, although it has to be said that, of course, if a country like Russia does in fact have laws against growing what they consider illegal drugs, and laws against the dissemination of information, that is a technical violation of the law, unlike speech. And you know, there's an argument of sorts to be made there. What creeps me out is when a country can censor the whole internet.
Exactly.
And that is problematic.
No, I mean, and again, I think that this, we've talked about this so much before with the, Right to be Forgotten and some of the EU's things against Google. They can have different versions of the site that will show up, that will maybe censor certain things if you're accessing it from those countries. But I'm sort of bothered by the fact that the Reddit was taken, the post was taken down. It's sort of disappointing.
Yeah, and Reddit has kind of been going along that vein lately, where they're just, everybody thought, oh, you guys are the hardcore freedom of speech people, and not really. They're taking stuff down because it's inconvenient for them. They're taking stuff down because it's inconvenient for Vladimir Putin. It's like, where's your commitment to free speech here?
Exactly.
So it's really disappointing. And this also, of course, there's the inevitable Streisand effect, where all kinds of people are scampering off to the internet to figure out how to grow magic mushrooms now because Russia mentioned it. So nobody was thinking about psychedelic mushrooms until this week. So thanks, Russia. Well, Bloomberg is reporting that Apple's live TV service, which we told you about a few months ago, will be delayed until at least next year. The problem is difficulty in negotiating licensing agreements with the likes of CBS, Fox, and other TV people. The TV companies want more money for the streams than Apple is willing to pay. And I think my theory here is, Christina warned, that Apple knows that the longer they wait, the more desperate the TV companies are going to be.
Exactly right.
And so they'll have them over a barrel next year.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, at this point, they've got to finally release the hardware. That there's just no way they can kind of get around that. But I think you're exactly right. The longer they wait, the more cord cutting is going to take off, the more that the revenues are going to start to slide on these companies, the more, companies like NBC Universal are going to have to invest in other alternative forms of journalism so that they can, prop up their content base because they're scared that no one's watching TV anymore. The more they'll be willing to say to Apple, okay, you know what, fine, we'll pay your paltry amounts, or we'll take your paltry amount and we'll be happy with it. And I mean, I think this is one of those games where honestly waiting is only going to work in their favor. And I think that they could still have a big hit on their hands if they're able to bundle things together in an easy to use way. Because as we've discussed before, the one thing that trumps, people will pay for things as long as it's convenient. So if they can make it convenient to access everything and you don't have to think about it, I think that they've got a hit on their hands.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And we got to wrap up for you coming right up, including our TNT fan of the day in just a sec. But let's first talk about Prosper, one of our sponsors today. Prosper is the way to get a loan that is the modern way. It's peer-to-peer lending, and it's a great, great idea. Now, when you think of getting a loan, what do you think about? Do you think about sitting in that little chair in the bank and with a desk there, and it's like begging some stranger to loan you some money so that you can pay enormous interest rates? There are no good ways to borrow money except for Prosper, and you can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days and use the money for just about anything you desire. But the thing about Prosper is it's shockingly fast and easy to do. You can't think of any other way to borrow money that's actually easy and actually fast. Basically the way this works is you go to the site, you enter in a few details, you say what you'd like the loan for, and many people tell me that they find out about their loan, whether they're approved or not, the same day. And then what that note will tell you is typically 2 to 4 days, the money will be in your account. It's super, super easy. And of course, they get people involved by, what does peer-to-peer lending mean? And that means other people who want to invest in your project, in your kitchen remodeling project, in your environmentally friendly green loan project, in your reorganization of your own credit card situation project. People who want to invest in that and get a nice, reasonable return for themselves will voluntarily step up and be part of that loan. And so you get the money right away. And again, it's so easy. It's as easy as some of the, just about any normal easy thing is on the internet, except you're getting a loan of up to $35,000. It is a fantastic service. They've facilitated loans totaling more than $4 billion. They've empowered more than 250,000 people. And again, borrowers are often approved on the same day. You really want to check this out because it will inspire you. It inspired me, and it will inspire you to think about what you might be able to do with a loan from Prosper. Now, and for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers and listeners a $50 Visa gift card with your low-interest loan. You get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days and a $50 Visa gift card. So just go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer that's just for you. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Tim Malone, who posted this picture on Google+. He's watching Tech News Today in between filming green screen sessions. And he urged us to keep up the great work and keep that tech news coming, and we surely will. And, yeah, we know what that's like, right, Jason? Being between green screen sessions and having Twit podcast playing. Yes, we know what that's all about. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. Christina Warren, what's going on in the world of Christina Warren?
Well, yeah, so we've got the, I had the Samsung event yesterday. We've got, some other kind of loose ends tying up with that. I think it's great that the phones will be out next week. So we're preparing, for a lot of that news. And that's really kind of all that's kind of going on right now. It's kind of a slow week other than all the Alphabet news. The Alphabet news was definitely big and unexpected. But other than that, I mean, it's still sort of the summer doldrums. So I don't have a ton going on at the moment.
I'm curious what your reaction was when you very first heard the Alphabet news. Did you think it was a prank or a joke?
At first I did. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't real. And then I looked into it and I went, oh, wow, this is real. I was like, I thought the URL abc.xyz was genius. I thought the Easter egg to the, Cooley was genius. But no, I mean, I was one of those things where I went, this is weird. And then the more you think about it, you're like, yeah, this is Larry and Sergey. This makes complete sense.
My theory is that Larry Page just wants to be able to say, oh, yeah, I'm abc.xyz CEO, and I'm kind of a BFD. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this guy...
I think that's right.
This guy's so rich and powerful, and he's young, and he's got his whole future ahead of him, and he can do whatever he wants. So he made himself emperor of his own private. He made himself. How did I phrase it on Twig? He made himself emperor of the only venture capital firm in his own private Silicon Valley. That's what he did, and I think a lot of us would do that if we could. So
I certainly would. That's yeah. No, I mean, and he owns the Alphabet.
Yeah, he does. He gets to spend billions of dollars without going to meetings. It's like the perfect job. Well, Christina Warren, thank you so much. It's so great to have you on every Friday, and we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, Mike.
All right, bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on your favorite podcast app, of course, or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. And you can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter name is Tech News Today TV. You can follow me at elgan.com. Also, don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight. Tonight's guest is VentureBeat news editor Harrison Weber. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. The show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Brian Burnett. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.